Actually, when you were talking, I'm thinking of my childhood, maybe the last question. I found it's quite interesting that how you spend your time in your childhood do really influence what you do today. For example, I was born in Shanghai. Actually, I live in the city and I am the only kid in my nuclear family. So I don't have siblings. I do have neighbors, but in Shanghai, we do play together for a while, but not so freely. So most of the time I need to play with myself. So I will play with some toys at home. And so I had an interesting habit of myself. I talked a lot to myself when I was a child. When you were talking you have a cow or you can swim in the river, I did not have that experience because I live in the city. So I am actually the one that do not touch the nature quite often. So when I go out now, my daughter asks me, Mom, oh, this flower is beautiful and what is that? And I said, a good question. Let me check my phone. And if she asked me to tell me what's the difference of rice and other plants, I need to Google and to see, oh, what is that? So I think I am the one that feel I really need to make up that lesson. So now I try to take her to the nature or to do things by herself instead of just buying something, or try to understand the nature or principles of things. But for me, it's like I'm taking another course or try to learn something, not some like you know it from your childhood, and it's so natural. And for me, I need to, intentionally to learn that.
Is a good point. You say several times in your speech about the learn, and I heard that learn swimming, and I will learn that, and I learn how to catch fish, and the learning part is actually the interesting part. But today I feel we teach much more as we give the children the freedom to learn. But I think all our property, what we're sharing with each other, is about our experience and our learning. So the word I learned it or I need to learn it. But the learning is a personal property. Teaching is from external. And it doesn't really stay with you. If somebody teach you, may you remember 5%. But if you really learn something, it looks like it stays in the memory, it stays in our whole life with us. So I think it's very important to give the children more chance to make own experience and learn by doing. So like even you Google or you try or you Baidu and you try to find what's behind. But this is all learning. So I think we need to give the children more time to learn than teaching them.
Experience. For example, when I was little, all the boys or even some girls in the village, how did we learn swimming? Someone older than you, if you want, they slow you to the river. Or you follow. Some kids are curious. You follow and drink some waters, and then you get used. That's the way how we get used to swimming. That's very, very simple. So you like a baby learn walking. They saw all adults or saw other older boys. They can run or they can walking. They have the passion or the inner power to work.
Try themselves.
Same as everything, I think.
Good point. This leads me to one memory I have with my children now. When I thought my daughter was 6, 7, I think it's an age good enough to drive a bicycle. It's important. So when I saw my daughter and I tried to motivate her to drive a bike, the supporting wheels off, and I hold it and I run behind her and I balance her. It takes me 2 or 3 days, and I try to teach her how to ride a bike. And it takes a lot of effort. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, I saw Noah, he take the supporting wheels off by himself, take the bike, start riding, fall down, get up, start riding again, fall, second time back. And since then, he drives the bike. Crazily, so he learned it by himself, as the timing was right. So it's also age appropriate, or the time was appropriate. It was by nature. So it doesn't need anybody to teach him. He see me riding a bike, he see his sister riding a bike, and the next thing was, now I'd like to go to school by my own bike. And we tried to persuade him that with 5 years could be a little bit too early through all the traffic, but it was us to stop him. Otherwise, he will drive to school by now. So interesting. You teach somebody, it takes a lot of effort.
Yes.
And the learning maybe looks like you don't need to teach. You may can teach some special skill, but the basic, I often also make a joke, you may never really learn how to walk. I mean, you learn how to walk, but you cannot be taught. Sorry, I like to say it that way around. The same with a language. Even people say, oh, Chinese is very complicated, or Hong Kongese, Cantonese, is so many tones. But children discover it, and children learn it naturally. And can you imagine sometime when I remember Anna, she has another gift. When she was 3 years, she speaks 3 languages. The reason is, sure, I speak English to her, and my wife is Chinese, so she speaks Chinese. So she have these 2 languages from day one, and our family, when we talk together, we still speak English. And then once I went to Europe with Vivian, and we decided, let's go for 2 weeks for a trip, and I leave her for 2 weeks with my mom, and she speaks only German. And I was nearly crying when I come home, and my daughter welcomed me in a proper German. And I cannot believe, how can you learn a language in 2 weeks? And then Anna say, all the neighbors here, they speak only German. The kids, and your mom, my grandmother also, so what choice I have? I say 2 weeks! But now I'm absolutely sure if I would bring her to France or to Spain for a month, she adapts languages like a play. So that's also an interesting part, how play can enter into something. And she played with a neighbor and she speaks a language. It was so frightening to me, and I know how many years I stay in China and how poor is my Chinese. So it's interesting part. And when you go through play, she did it, and she haven't forgot it by now, and we still don't speak German. But when my mom is on the phone, Anna still is able to talk in a proper German to her. And this by 2 weeks, this makes me really wonder how much we can learn through play and how hard is teaching. It's an interesting experience for me. So we need to generate more interest for our children. Stimulation, motivation.
Yeah, motivation.
I think we all know when we are motivated for something, we can learn quick. Anybody else have experience on that area from their own childhood or from your children?
Yes, I'll take 2 examples. This New Year, Chinese New Year. So I think that every child is afraid of fire. But in my hometown, not in my hometown, in all the countryside, when the grass grow yellow, we will take the fire so that the grass can grow very well next year. So I took my child home. I do not tell him that this is dangerous, so just take the fire. And he takes the fire.
Wow.
Even you can see the fire after miles, it's very big, but he's not afraid. When he came back to Shanghai, he's not afraid of fire. So like what Peter said about the bicycle. My son, that he is 4 years old. Last summer, we buy the bike without any supporting. I don't tell him it's very hard to learn. He learned to ride the bicycle within 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's very simple. In this Chinese New Year, I took my child home for 2 weeks. I remember that maybe last week when I was talking to my mother by telephone. We speak local native language, but my son can learn. I understand what I have said to my mother. The same, only 2 weeks. Even my wife does not know a lot of words. so I tell my mom that we do not have secret now.
Good. So it's very interesting that also childhood and learning doesn't make a difference by where you've grown up. It looks like it's a common thing. It doesn't matter I come from Germany or from Romania or from China. It's a global thing. As long as we have children, it's all the same. It's also interesting, as we often make it different to say, we have different culture. But I also believe culture is taught. Culture is an experience. It's also a learning you get used to. It's not a given. It needs to be learned or experienced, and then it becomes a culture or a difference. But I think it doesn't come with the birth.
Yeah, I think you experience and then you learn it. You see whatever is around you, and that's how you
You
learn.
adapt it. You
Yeah.
adapt.
Adapting.
If you see something else, that's what you learn. If you see this thing, that's what you learn.
Yeah, then we generate a culture out of this,
Right.
but it doesn't mean it have to stay. So that means habits, maybe also being coming this way. You see it, and then you adopt it.
Yes.
So then you could also have and grow a habit out of it. I think experience is a very important word. So that we cannot have all the experience. So from HP, at least from our point, often we think if we can give the children the experience of learn through play. That was why we say often also love, play, learn. It's a basic of that. And cities are absorbing so many children, and we know the migrants of people going to the city, it become more and more. I mean, by now, more than half of world population already live in cities. And maybe 50 years ago, this was 10%. And 90% was still farmer and countryside related. But now the big vision is go to the city, make money, and not everybody will be successful. But this is the big story, and we migrate to cities. So I think we could see how we can balance that out as we're missing something, and how we can replace that. It's important for childhood.